If there is a hell on earth, it is the lives of children in Gaza. Those are the words of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres at a General Assembly meeting on the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Representatives from around the world are meeting now to discuss the latest escalation in violence between Israel, Hamas and its allied groups. Several foreign ministers are taking part in the diplomatic push for a ceasefire. The meeting follows days of Israel's ally, the US, blocking efforts at the UN Security Council to agree on a resolution calling for an end to the hostilities.
The fighting must stop immediately. I appeal to all parties to cease hostilities now, and I reiterate my call on all sides for an immediate ceasefire. The hostilities have caused serious damage to vital civilian infrastructure in Gaza, including roads and electricity lines, contributing to a humanitarian emergency. Crossings into Gaza have been closed and power shortages are affecting water supplies. Hundreds of buildings and homes have been destroyed, damaged or rendered uninhabitable. Airstrikes have damaged several hospitals, which were already short of supplies due to years of debilitating closures exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic.
In Gaza, Israeli fighter jets are continuing to cause more destruction and death. In just the past 24 hours, 2 crowded refugee camps, homes to tens of thousands of people, have come under attack. So far, 233 Palestinians, including 65 children, have been killed in the Israeli offensive, which began just last week. And Palestinian groups Hamas and its allied factions have also stepped up their rocket attacks against towns and cities in Israel. This is Beersheba in the south, where several people have been injured today. Rockets were also fired towards Ashkelon, causing some damage there. In the coming hour, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be meeting with his top security officials to discuss the ongoing military escalation in Gaza and the possibility of a ceasefire. Well, we have Sami Abu Salem. He's a Palestinian journalist in Gaza. We'll get an update from Gaza shortly. We have Imran Khan, who is live for us in West Jerusalem. Hoda Abdelhamid, who's standing by in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. But first, let's talk to Kristen Salumi at the United Nations headquarters in New York. So this UN General Assembly meeting going on as we speak. Some strong words that we've heard from speakers so far. But the question is, what is it actually going to achieve?
That's right. Well, they are hoping, first and foremost, that it will achieve a ceasefire immediately. And we have 95 countries who have signed up to speak on this issue. Many of them have been speaking out individually. Those who are in the Security Council have been speaking out in the Council. But this is the first time that this international body has gathered since the most recent escalation in violence. And we are hearing certain themes repeat themselves. As I said, first and foremost, the call for an immediate ceasefire, also a focus on the humanitarian situation and civilian casualties. The Secretary General Antonio Guterres described what's happening in Gaza as hell on earth for children. He described attacks on journalists as extremely concerning. And he said that first and foremost, civilians must be protected. Again, these are themes that have been echoed by many of the speakers here. Also, focus on international law and some of the underlying issues that have brought the conflict to this point. Jordan, Foreign Minister, Deputy Prime Minister speaking recently talked about occupation being the source of all evil here, an attempt to focus on the plight of Palestinians, and particularly in Gaza, recent escalations from the forcible removal of people from their homes and the threat of forcible removal of people, Palestinians, from their homes in East Jerusalem, which led to an increase in tensions, attacks on holy sites in East Jerusalem, and so on. So right now what we are hearing is an attempt to amplify the calls for a ceasefire, to put pressure on Israel and Hamas, but also also on the United States, which has been seen as kind of holding back an international response to the crisis.
Many thanks for that. Kristen Salumi there for us at the United Nations. We will return to the United Nations when we hear the US ambassador to the UN speak a bit later. Let's talk to Sami Abu Salem now, who is a Palestinian journalist living in Gaza. He joins us live from there. Sami, rocket attacks continue to pound Gaza. Bring us up to date. What is the latest where you are?
The latest, we have just heard a big explosion, and we have heard also the Israeli jet fighters. We have no details about the last airstrike, what it has targeted exactly. And bombing continues across the Gaza Strip, especially in Khan Yunis, Rafah, Jabalia, Al-Maghazi, and Beit Lahia by cannon or airstrikes. Several houses have been targeted, and the latest fatal attack was against a vehicle, where there 2 people have been killed on the spot at the same place where Al Jazeera English crew were in north of Gaza. Actually, now we are in Gaza City, next to the headquarters of the United Nations, and behind us a building which has been destroyed, which hosted the bookstore, stationery, and press house. While I'm coming from the north of Gaza, I have seen queues or pillars of people are standing waiting for food supplies from an NGO, charity NGO. They are standing in a long line waiting for the food supply. I asked them, where are you from? Actually, it was in Jabalia refugee camp, but they said they are from Beit Hanun, from Beit Lahia, from Nasser village, which means they are from the UN schools who are hosting tens of thousands of people, displaced people who left their houses and came to take a shelter at the UN school. During driving between Jabalia and Gaza, I have seen that the infrastructure is strongly hit. I mean, I have seen water pipes is exploded. That's why there is a shortage of water in vast areas of Gaza Strip. I have seen sewage is flooding in the streets, which means that there is, maybe it is environmental or health problem. And of course, the electric power shortage continues. In my house, 15 hours I lived last night, which affect the kids and my work. Anyway, one of the main point also, people at the shelters or inside their house, they are trying to adaptate with the new style of life, a new lifestyle, which means that they are going to adaptate in their food. I mean, they are depending on canned food or potatoes, things like this, or pasta, etc. And the shortage of water dashes them to go to other wells who sells or donate water for free. And also I have seen a group of kids and women are trying to fill water there. Another point, which is, I think it is significant, inside the school, at the door of the gate of one of the UN schools, I have met a family who are standing at the gate. They are questioning whether to leave or not to leave. That's the question. Their question, asking themselves, shall they leave the shelter and go back to their homes, which is risky, or to stay inside the shelter, which is also risky because of COVID-19, the danger of COVID-19, the danger of cleaning, the danger of social problems inside. So they are in a dilemma. This is some details of the latest development in Gaza.
Sami, thank you. Sami Abu Salem, a Palestinian journalist living in Gaza, describing a very, very difficult situation for the people there. Let's return now to the UN General Assembly, because we heard from the Palestinian Foreign Minister just a little earlier. He had this message for the international community.
فلقد آن الأوان أن يتحمل المجتمع الدولي. It's high time for the international community to shoulder its responsibilities, to end the Israeli occupation of our land, of our holy sites, of our present and our future. It's high time to take practical measures to provide international protection to the Palestinian people until they can practice their right to self-determination. We urge you to honor your commitments under international law, including not to acknowledge the illegal status created by Israeli procedures and policies in occupied Palestine, including in East Jerusalem. We call upon you not to provide any assistance or support to entrench and maintain the current status. We call upon you to differentiate between Israel, the occupying power, and the occupied territories, and to ensure accountability.
Let's go over now to Ramallah in the occupied West Bank and Huda Abdelhamid. Huda, good to see you. I have a question for you. I just wonder, you're in Ramallah. I wonder how much people there really pay attention to what is going on at the United Nations. We just heard from the Palestinian ambassador there. Do they actually think anything happening there could make a difference to what's happening to their lives?
Well, the short answer would be no. I mean, they have been through this many, many times before. I mean, if you look at how many resolutions were passed since 1948, 88 of them, none of that have changed anything for the Palestinians except that life has become worse and worse and the occupation has expanded further and further. If you look at just behind me here in central Ramallah, the streets are bustling, people are going about their own lives. And in the past I have asked many times, are you listening, are you following what's happening at the UN? And they said they didn't trust anyone anymore. Basically, really, the feeling among the common Palestinian on the streets, especially the youth, those who were born after Oslo, those who were told to believe in peace, and those who were deeply disappointed by what's happening, and those who are fighting at the moment on those front lines, on those friction points between the Israeli army or the border between the occupied West Bank and Israel. Those youth don't believe in anything anymore. They actually think, many of them think, that the fighting should go on at this stage because politics have completely failed them. So it is a very difficult situation. They wouldn't be listening to what's happening now. They would want to know, they would listen if someone comes in with some firm, hard piece of news, I would say, something that really changes something on the ground. They need to see that with their own eyes. They need to believe in it for them to start believing again that peaceful means would lead anywhere. At the moment, especially if we look at all what happened under the Trump administration, when he unilaterally announced that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel, when he moved the embassy, when the Golan Heights were annexed, all of that has angered more and more Palestinians. And then all what happened during the month of Ramadan, this Israeli forces entering Al-Aqsa Mosque on one of the holiest nights for Muslims, the continuous harassing of the youth, telling them to go away, not to stand in front of Damascus Gate, which is basically an area where they just hang around, the expansion of these illegal settlements, which really flourished under the Trump administration, now the threatened expulsion of those families in Sheikh Jarrah, all of that is piling up. And the anger, I mean, we say that over and over again, but each time it actually reaches new heights. So at the moment, you have two issues here that are very important for Palestinians. What's going on in Gaza, what they see is basically random killing of Gazan civilians. They watch online, they watch on TV these buildings collapsing to the ground, the children screaming in fear. They see all of that. And then there is a real deep belief rooted among Palestinians that at the moment Israel's main aim is to really expel them as much as possible from occupied East Jerusalem, which they look at as the future capital of their state. So all of them, unless they get something concrete on the ground that changes their optics of all of that, anything that's happening at the UN is something that's happening at the UN that doesn't concern them.
Many thanks for that. Huda Abdelhamid there for us in Ramallah. Let's go to West Jerusalem now and speak to Imran Khan. Imran, there's been a lot of speculation over the last few days about the possibility of a ceasefire. What are you hearing about it?
Well, I'm hearing that there might be a ceasefire, there might not be a ceasefire. Basically, there is confused situation. Over the last few days, there has been a number of statements being put out by a number of different players within this conflict itself. Hamas, at the very beginning of the conflict, said that if there was going to be any ceasefire, it would have to involve occupied East Jerusalem. But now they've taken a much harder line. They've said any ceasefire that takes place must involve Gaza and Gaza alone. However, what we're hearing from the Israeli side is a bit more subdued. The Israeli media seems to get very excited, saying there's pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to actually bring together a ceasefire, and then he comes out with complete defiance when it comes to any talk of a ceasefire. He says this is a deterrent, and if necessary, we can conquer Hamas and Gaza. Now, there is a meeting, a very key meeting, the Security Cabinet, which is chaired by the caretaker Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who'll be speaking to various members of his Security Cabinet. It's at that meeting, which takes place in about a 45 minutes' time, we think, that any potential ceasefire will be discussed. But he'll also have to have meetings with the army, with Shin Bet, the intelligence agencies, with Mossad, the foreign intelligence agencies, and then any decision to agree to a ceasefire has to be taken. But we're not going to know. And this is precedent. This is historical precedent. We normally don't hear what the results of those Security Cabinet meetings are. Now, clearly, whilst all of this is going on, there is diplomatic movement here in West Jerusalem. The German Foreign Minister has turned up with a number of other foreign ministers. They have been visiting sites where rockets have landed. The Foreign Ministry here in Israel is saying that it's a visit of solidarity, which is unusual language, but clearly at the time of conflict, a message that they want to kind of push forward. What does that mean? Are they discussing a ceasefire? Well, more than likely, that's going to be the main thing on everybody's mind. And you heard, we've also got the United Nations General Assembly going on, a very special session going on right there. You heard my colleague Christine Salumi talk about that. The governments of Israel are traditionally very good at ignoring the United Nations somewhat. 88 resolutions, I think, involving Israel and all Palestine. None of them have been paid much attention to by successive Israeli government. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu has often said that the United Nations is the most anti-Israeli body on the planet. They simply don't pay any attention to those. But they do pay attention to the United States of America. And President Joe Biden has, in a number of phone calls, reiterated to the Prime Minister that a ceasefire needs to take place. But the language he's used has caused some concern amongst politics watchers here, because he's used the words de-escalation on the path to a ceasefire. For a lot of people, that's too soft. For others, it's actually a green light for Netanyahu to continue this for as long as he possibly thinks he can either get away with or he desires.
And Imran, in terms of the rockets themselves, the conflict itself, rockets into Israel from Palestine, is that still ongoing today?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen rockets coming into Ashkelon, Ashdod, and into Beersheba. But we've also seen that heavy bombardment continue from air, land, and sea from Israel. And we've been talking about this for the last few days, but it's worth just mentioning right now very quickly. Aid still isn't going through the Karim Abu Salem checkpoint. That's one of the checkpoints through the barrier into Gaza. The Israelis say they can't secure the checkpoint. There was a mortar attack that landed there 2 days ago, which actually injured an Israeli soldier. Now, the United Nations are clearly negotiating very hard to try and get that aid in, but it's simply not going in. So until there is a ceasefire, it's unlikely that aid will go in. So it's not just the Israelis and the Palestinians, who are hopeful that there may be a ceasefire. It's also the United Nations, but when I say the Israelis and the Palestinians, I actually don't mean the governments or the political parties within the Gaza Strip itself. They're in negotiations. They know whether there'll be a ceasefire or not in the coming days. I'm just talking about ordinary people who are living in those areas on both sides of the barrier of Gaza, who've often told us and other media that they want either things to end or, on the Israeli side certainly, for Hamas to be destroyed.
Many thanks for that update, Imran Khan, there for us in West Jerusalem.